Hey guys, today we're checking out things considered a luxury in the US but normal in Germany. I wonder what it is, so let's get into this.
Are considered a luxury in the US but normal in Germany? Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. I am Donnie, along with my wife Aubrey. We are two Americans currently living in Germany with our baby, sharing all of our experiences living and traveling throughout Europe. One of the best things about living in a foreign country as a foreigner is getting to see what is considered normal parts of everyday life in one culture that in another doesn't exist. However, there are things readily available on both sides of the Atlantic, but because of cultural differences, Americans consider luxury items that Europeans just view as a staple of life and don't understand how
I'm really
someone could
curious
do
what it
without.
is.
And that's exactly what I'm going to talk about today in my video. Bling bling ka-ching, or just a normal thing. Using bathrooms in Germany can be a traumatic experience for Americans. For example, when using a poop shelf toilet for the first time. However, using a German bathroom can also be a luxurious experience for Americans. I've already talked about how German showers with their movable shower heads can
I've
be a
seen this
luxurious
one
experience
in
for
my last
Americans who
video.
are used to the standard shower being one with a dinky fixed shower head that doesn't reach those hard to reach places. But the luxurious experiences in German bathrooms
Definitely
don't end
hard.
there. When an American steps out of that German shower, reaches for their towel, and finds it is warmed for them, they will be blown away with the luxury that is towel warmers.
I've never heard that
Or
before.
towel radiators is a special radiator that is designed to heat your room so that you can benefit from its warmth on your towels after bathing or showering. I do like to mention in my videos that I'm originally from a southern state in the US called Oklahoma and now live in the southwestern German state of Rhineland-Pfalz. Therefore, some of these things are a bit more specific to these two places. Like, for example, in Oklahoma, radiators are very uncommon as most homes have central heating and cooling systems. In fact, when we first moved here, we had no idea how radiators even worked. When we first came in contact with towel heaters, it seemed like we could hang a towel on it, but we weren't really fully sure if we could safely put towels on radiators without it being a fire hazard or something. Now that we know what these are, when one is available to us in the winter, we love to treat ourselves to a luxurious feeling of wrapping ourselves in a nice warm towel directly after showering rather than a gross room temperature one.
That would be nice.
So it's summertime, and summertime in Germany.
Yeah, I've never heard that before. That is what I want now. Because when you get out of the shower, it's super cold. So that would be something nice to wrap yourself with that warm towel.
Germany and the US means ice cream. Well, actually, no, it doesn't. But kind of. In the US, summertime definitely means ice cream, but in Germany, summertime means gelato. Now, some of you might be thinking gelato is just the Italian translation for ice cream, and yes, but also no. So in the US, you have what I guess you would call American ice cream that we obviously just call ice cream. And this is the dominant form of this dessert in the US. But in Germany, ice can be a bit confusing because generally Germans don't always use different words to distinguish between ice cream and gelato, where Americans are very particular about making this distinction. Gelato contains less fat, is much softer, and served slightly warmer. Germans might call some ice cream assortments Amerikanisches Eis, or I've even seen ice cream American style. But to be specific, in Germany, Italian gelato style of ice cream definitely is the dominant form of ice cream and has been since about the 1950s when Germans started flocking to Italy for vacation and fell in love with this treat. Therefore, in Germany, ice cream in general has a strong attachment to the Italian culture and themes, and getting a scoop of Italian gelato is a common weekend activity for Germans. However, in the US, where ice cream has next to no Italian connections or connotations to it, and where American ice cream is the dominant form. When an American finds a specialty shop specializing in gelato, this is considered a luxurious and specialty item. One expert said it like this: "We tend to think of gelato as this
Special
special
thing.
thing made by artisans in small premium batches. For Americans, gelato comes from a faraway land, making it exotic and exciting rather than the ice cream from down the street." Italian culture also is often associated with class, culture, and fashion. Even just using a foreign word like gelato automatically gives it a luxurious feel in the States. So when Americans travel to Europe, one of their top bucket list items is to eat as much gelato as they possibly can find because of how unique and special it feels for us.
Yeah, that is so true. When you hear the word gelato, you think it's a really fancy ice cream. And yeah, that is true because when you travel around the world, like in Asia, especially, and then you will try to get some gelato ice cream, the portion is really small. That is so annoying and it's expensive too. So yeah, it's really a luxury. Even in America too, yeah. But it's really good. I love gelato ice cream. Very good. So yes, when I go to Europe, I'll definitely eat a lot. Or when I go to Germany.
Eating out with a German is a luxurious experience itself. One of the biggest things we hear our American family or friends talk about when they visit Europe is how either painfully slow the service was at restaurants or how lovely they found the slower pace and relaxing atmosphere around eating at a restaurant. For our European friends who have visited the US, we have heard them complain about how they couldn't get used to being constantly interrupted by waitstaff in restaurants, or they'll say they loved the service and how attentive it was. Well, in the US, home to fast casual dining, I can speak from experience that for many Americans like me, spending hours at a dinner was something you did for very special occasions. For our family, if we ate out for just any old random dinner, even at sit-down dining restaurants on the weekend, we could expect it to last no more than an hour most of the time. In fact, the one time that I can really think about dinners taking more than an hour was when my family used to get really dressed up fancy, go to a fancy steakhouse for very special occasions, and those dinners could take up to 2 or 2.5 hours. Therefore, in my mind, luxury dinners were long meals. Whereas in Germany, eating out and taking a long time can be expected, and often when you reserve a table, you are reserving it for the evening, not just for a short hour-long meal. In fact, we commonly come into the situation where we go to a restaurant without making a reservation, ask for a table, and we'll be told something like, "Sorry, we don't have any available." And we'll look around and see a completely empty restaurant. And that's because a table could be reserved for a few hours later. They just can't give you the table and then you stay for a few hours. The reservations show up and they have to figure out how to kick you out. In these situations, restaurants will sometimes say, "Well, if you only stay for an hour and a half or 2, you can eat, but you must leave before this reservation comes in." When we hear something like this, we just laugh because of course, for us Americans,
that's a long time.
Sure, we'll be here for an hour max, maybe even just 40 minutes. Now, if we look at some data of how long different cultures spend eating, we see the US or even Germany don't spend nearly as long eating as the French, Italians, or Spaniards, but we have definitely noticed a fairly big difference in culture around how normal it is to take longer at restaurants in Germany than it is for Americans in the US, generally speaking.
That is true.
One thing we have talked a lot about is how shocking it is for Americans coming to Germany for the first time to find out just how comfortable Germans are in their own skin.
What does that mean?
And literally in just their own skin. And nothing else. Naked. But one thing that is considered a luxury in the US that is fairly everyday and normal for Germans is where they are getting naked. In the US, saunas or spas fall into 2 different categories generally. A sauna is going to be in a gym or a YMCA, nothing fancy or nice, again, generally speaking, but maybe you can find a fancy spa with a sauna, and Americans can have a day of luxury and self-care by visiting one of these. These will generally be associated with spending a decent amount of money, and I would say for an average American is a very special occasion and luxury. However, in Germany, Germans enjoy a very strong sauna or spa culture where they go for hours at a time to sit in
Oh my
saunas, relax in
gosh.
pools,
How
or sip drinks
long?
in their robes lounging on beds in quiet rooms. And yes, they do all this co-ed and naked. Not every German does this regularly, but I
Okay.
definitely know a lot of Germans who, given any Friday night, you can find them at the local sauna hanging out with all of the other regulars. Granted, there are going to be varying degrees of fanciness of saunas in Germany, ranging from your small local
Oh my
sauna where you
gosh. Yeah,
go
that
and
look
sweat it out with
fancy.
no bells or whistles, to your mid-tier saunas that offer some soaking pools, may have a masseuse on staff, and wider ranging offerings of sauna types, to very elaborate
Oh.
fancy saunas with swim at bars, insane theme saunas, light
How
shows during sauna
expensive is
ceremonies, and
this?
more. This last type can get pricey, and therefore these may not necessarily be a place you find regulars every week, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are some that do visit those on the reg. There's also sauna clubs, but I'm not talking about those in this video because they aren't really
What does that even
fancy, and
mean?
I would just go ahead and say that you should probably avoid those. But even for Germans who don't go once a week to a sauna, I would still say there is a cultural difference between how Americans look at spas and saunas as luxuries than how Germans do,
It
where
is
it is a
luxury
staple part of
in the
German culture.
US. Living in a jet
What can
plane.
Germans afford that Americans can't? Traveling has certainly changed a lot in the last 50 years. When my parents talk about flying when they were younger, they talk about how people used to get dressed up to fly, whereas today, people wear whatever they sleep in to be as comfortable as possible. Hopefully you wear
Yep.
something when you sleep if that's the case for you. And even though prices seem to be getting higher for flights as the cost of fuel rises and inflation affects us all, the overall affordability of traveling over time has decreased dramatically from the early days of plane travel, enabling more and more people to visit new places. However, I would argue that flying for a holiday still feels like more of a luxury for Americans than for Germans or Europeans as a whole, and a big part of that has to do with the very unluxurious budget airlines. In Europe, there are a multitude of airlines that you can choose from when wanting to fly on holiday, with the most famous probably being Ryanair. These budget airlines are famous for offering fares connecting major European cities for no more than 20 to 60 euros-ish. And some people online even brag about flights they got for like €2. Now,
For
these
real?
are stripped down experiences. Don't expect to have bags, comfortable seats, or even necessarily pleasant experiences.
I do not
but
care.
it's
I'll
not
get on
all
that one.
bad. And often, just the fact that you can jet set to incredible European destinations for insanely low fares often
Oh my
far outweighs the
gosh.
problems you run into when flying with budget airlines. And with the crazy low fares, flying to holiday doesn't have to be a luxury and can be fairly accessible for all. In the US, we do have budget
That's
airlines,
true.
but Americans don't generally expect to find insane deals where it's just absurdly inexpensive like we hear is possible in Europe. While in the United States, budget airlines may reduce ticket prices by 20 to 30%, a ticket in Europe can drop to as low as a quarter of a traditional ticket on a full-service
Is
network
this
carrier.
true?
Therefore, you have things like the Great American Road Trip and Route 66 as famous and popular options for Americans wanting to take a holiday,
Yep.
and flying can be a luxurious splurge. But how can Europe achieve
Yeah, it's really so expensive flying in the US, even though it's not that far. Like, I don't know why. And there was a time that I look up, I was gonna go to Florida. Like, it's just for a few days or like a week. And I think that was like $300. I was like, oh my god, that's a lot of money and I still have to eat. So I was like, maybe next time. How is it possible for this in Europe for €2? Is it true? Oh my gosh, that is crazy. I've heard that also, like in Europe, places are not that far, like to go in a different country because they're really close. Is that why it's cheaper? But it's not that far in the US too. I don't know. But yeah, this is really surprising.
this in the US can't seem to match? Well, that's multifaceted and there are a lot of reasons. Part of it is the fact that in Europe, airlines are not only competing with each other, but also competing with other means of transportation like high-speed trains. Of course, more competition can mean better prices as different means of transportation compete for you to use it. In the US, you want to get somewhere quickly, Flying is basically your only choice as the train infrastructure just doesn't exist. There's the fact
Nope.
that foreign countries can't operate domestic flights in the US, whereas in Europe, various countries' airlines can operate throughout Europe, again, driving
That
up
is
the
nice.
competition and driving down the prices. There's also the fact that Europe is more densely settled along with well-connected secondary airports. These secondary airports may not be in the destination city you want to go to, but because of a better public transportation network than what you find in the US, you can fly to those airports and still reach your destination relatively easily. Secondary airports offer lower landing fees than primary airports, therefore allowing lower airfare. In the US, you land at a secondary airport, good luck getting to where you actually want to go cheaply.
Yeah, it's
To
really
see who made
far.
it this far into the video, the random question of the week.
Alright, so that was the things considered luxury in the US but normal in Germany. And yeah, those are really true. Gelato, a restaurant. And what surprised me the most is the towel thing. I want that because I don't want to get out of the shower and it's really, really cold. My towel is cold. I hate it. But yeah, see you guys next time. Bye.